Just 6% of all new cars sold in the U.S. last year were all electric. That number would need to jump to almost 67% in less than a decade to meet the strongest ever new car emission standards recently proposed. It is an aggressive timetable, but supporters are hopeful, admitting it will be a heavy lift. On the road to an electric vehicle future for America, the nation will require a robust network of EV charging stations across the country. So this is electric?
This is electric.
One of the very first?
One of the first.
Brad Brownell knows cars. He's director of the Crawford Auto and Aviation Museum in Cleveland, Ohio, which has a fascinating collection of electric vehicles.
This was probably the first daily viable kind of electric car.
Brownell is on board with the need to electrify, and as a longtime automotive writer, took a 10-day cross-country trip to evaluate the nation's EV charging network.
I would say overall, it was an eye-opening experience. The biggest surprise to me was I found places like Fort Wayne, Indiana, had almost no charging at all.
He calls the middle of the country an EV charging wasteland.
Sometimes we would pull in and it would say, stop the vehicle, charge immediately, you're at 0%.
Oh my goodness, that must have been nerve-wracking. Spotlight on America rented a Tesla Model 3 and hit the road in Ohio. How convenient is it to find charging stations?
At this stage, I would say it's not very convenient because you'll often have to drive out of your way to find one.
Right now, the country has about 53,000 public EV charging locations nationwide. States with the most, California by far, followed by New York, Florida, and Texas. States with the fewest, Montana, North Dakota, Wyoming, South Dakota, and Alaska. When you're driving long distance in an EV, range anxiety is very real, not only because of the patchy charging network, but also because of the reliability of the charging stations once you do reach them. Brownell says it's not uncommon for charging ports to be out of service, and even when they are working, some don't charge at the promised rate.
I've experienced extremely slow charging, and I've experienced where I've had to call and have the machine reset.
Making EV charging both convenient and reliable will be essential to make the ambitious EV goals feasible. Will the country's infrastructure be ready for this in less than a decade?
There's a lot of work to be done for sure, but we think we will be ready.
The Department of Energy's Michael Barabee says construction is underway to build out the charging network.
We will be able to build out across every interstate, every U.S. highway, all the major roads, having them at least every 50 miles.
$7.5 billion from the infrastructure law passed in 2021 is funding the effort, with tens of millions of dollars designated for every state. The goal to go from just under 150,000 individual public charging outlets now to 500,000 by 2030. As for the reliability issue, Barabee acknowledges it's a problem being addressed.
A lot of times right now you hear reports about, a lot of these chargers are broken. A lot of these chargers are like 7, 8, 9 years ago when EV charging was just starting to happen. The chargers that are being built today and that are going to be really the vast majority of everything out there are much higher quality.
The electric grid is another area of concern. Are blackouts going to be a concern here for people when we have so much extra demand?
I don't think that electric vehicles will cause any more of a problem with blackouts. Obviously, the grid's got to be strong and resilient. It's got to be maintained to avoid blackouts all the time.
Can the electric grid handle the acceleration towards this transition?
The answer, the devil really is in the details.
Dr. Ramteen Sioshansi is a leading expert on energy technology. He's a professor and director of Carnegie Mellon University's Electricity Industry Center.
It depends really on how people are going to be using and recharging their vehicles. If everyone is going to be recharging on hot summer afternoons, then the answer is no, because you're adding all of this demand at kind of the absolute worst time.
C. O'Shaughnessy says the grid does have excess capacity for increased demand, but managing when customers charge will be important to avoid overload at peak times. It's called smart charging, and technology is being developed to do it.
Rather than just sending electrons to the vehicle the minute it plugs in, the software behind the scenes can be saying, you know what, right now is a peak time in the grid, and you only need 2 hours of charging maybe to fill up. We'll do it in the middle of the night, and you postpone when the electrons come.
So will that control when people can charge? So you can't be in charge of your own destiny for when you want your vehicle to charge?
Yeah, no, that would not work.
There is still a lot of uncertainty, but if what's past is prologue,
In 1900, it was easier to have an electric vehicle like this
Yes.
than a gas vehicle.
Yes.
car enthusiasts like Brownell are hopeful history will repeat itself, especially with billions of dollars being spent now to make it happen.
I believe that the will is there. The will follow the money.
Spotlight on America also wanted to interview the Secretary of the Department of Transportation for this report, since they distribute all of that infrastructure money to the states, but their office declined. I'm Angie Moreschi for Spotlight on America. Hi, I'm National Investigative Correspondent Angie Moreschi. Thanks for watching Spotlight on America on YouTube. If you enjoy our investigative reports, please consider subscribing to our channel. And if you have a tip for a future investigation, we want to hear from you. Just send your idea to spotlight@sbgtv.com. And we'll see you next time.